Hello, my friend. At the beginning of February 1973, I went to spend 10 days in a country that would prove to be a premonition of what was to come. It was in Israel. I had a little adventure with a young Israeli girl of 18 years old who came to visit Paris. And when she came back home, she offered me to join her and to be my guide to discover her country. Marcel was not very educated, was originally from North Africa, and did not know much about the history of her people. I knew a lot more than she did, especially since I had read two novels in the original versions, Exodus and Fighting Heroes of Israel, just before I left to improve my English. She lived in Tel Aviv, and I was warmly welcomed by her family. We were going to lie down on the warm sand on the nearby beaches, but not to swim, the Mediterranean being still too cold. We went to visit Jerusalem by taking a small train in which we were strongly shaken in the numerous turns. I was discovering this city so important in history, but whose architecture and surrounding landscape did not fill me with enthusiasm. We visited the souk. Then we went to the Wailing Wall, and climbing a long path, we arrived at the esplanade of the sumptuous Mosque of Omar. From there, I had a view that went very far, and I saw a large part of the history arise in my mind that I told Marcel. Egypt, Nebuchadnezzar, the Romans, Jesus, the Arabs, the Crusades, the Turks, Bonaparte and the French armies, the English, the creation of Israel and its battles, etc. It is unbelievable what has happened in this small country. We returned to Tel Aviv, where we took a collective cab to the north when we finally arrived at a kibbutz perched in the mountains. The landscape was splendid, and we could see Lebanon and its super majestic cedars in the distance. The welcome was icy, as if to confirm what was said about the Sabras, inhabitants of the kibbutz, that they were like prickly figs, prickly on the outside, but sweet on the inside. Sweet and warm, they showed it in the same evening by making a party with many wild and joyful dances in which they invited us. The next day, early in the morning, we drove down to Tel Aviv in a Land Rover. In the bends of this mountains road, one could see Lake Tiberias, slaved with the birth of the day, and the Jordan River, celebrated in the Old Testament and places of Jesus' exploits, which at that time did not speak to me more than that. After a few days in Tel Aviv, we took a small propeller plane to go to Eilat at the end of the Red Sea. During the flight, which took place at a much lower altitude than in a jet, I was able to contemplate at leisure the great desert that occupies most of Israel, and especially the Dead Sea and its arid banks. When we arrived in Eilat, we settled for a few days in large camping cars that have since been replaced by sumptuous hotels. When we looked at the sea toward the south, we saw on the right the Sinai, the high place of the history of the Hebrew, and on the left, Jordan. As the sun set, I understood why this sea is called the Red Sea. The ray of the setting sun shining on the cliffs of Jordan reflect on the waters, giving them these intense red colors. There were very few tourists, and even though it was February, we went swimming very quietly in the warm water while watching the dolphins that came near the beach to play with the basins. I had brought with me from Paris a high-quality portable cassette recorder of the UR brand. We could take it everywhere, which was a great novelty. Marcel liked so much to walk around with his device hanging on her shoulder that when I came back to France, I left it to her as a farewell gift and as a thank you for the beautiful journey where she has served me as my guide. I had a little emotion at the border airport, looking at my passport, seeing that I was an architect. The policeman asked me what the price of house in the Paris area was. At the time, I thought it was a check to make sure I was the person in the passport and not a terrorist. But not at all. He told me that he was having trouble adapting to Israeli life and that he was considering returning to France. If I had known what was going to happen to me much later, I would have watched Israel more carefully. But at the same time, if it is good to look at the past, one should not be too attached to it as it is the case in many traditions. I believe that an excessive attachment to the past limits the possibilities of access to higher planes of consciousness. We can only access it by diving into the present.